All right, hello, and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I am delighted to be joined by Daniel Solomons, who is in New York, and Shawn Wells, who is in Dallas. How are you doing, guys?
Great to be on. Thank you for
Yeah,
having us.
Thank you for
yeah,
having us.
and Daniel is the CEO of Update Energy Drink, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And Shawn Wells is an ingredientologist. Did I get that right? Ingredientologist.
That's
That's
right.
pretty. This,
Exactly. Yes.
I have to say, this is the most challenging podcast I've ever done. Pronounce that I've never pronounced before. So, a visionary scientist behind 1,000 groundbreaking formulations, including 50 patented ingredients like paraxanthine, which is what we're going to talk about a lot, because this is what you have done with the energy update drink, is you brought in this ingredient that's kind of revolutionary. So can you, either Daniel or Shawn, just give me the background about how you came together and why you felt there was a need for another energy drink?
Sure, I'll jump in. John, thanks for having us. The long story short is we never really drunk energy drinks. We always felt that the narrative was how much caffeine can you fit into a can, how much sugar can you put into the can, and how sweet can you make it. And those weren't things that really appealed to us. It felt quite unhealthy. At the end of the day, though, everyone needs energy. So what do we all revert to? We all tend to revert to caffeine,
Yeah.
whether it's coffee, tea, or energy drinks. But those weren't things that really appealed to us. And so what we thought was, what if we could create an energy drink without caffeine? Because if we're able to do that, we could give you the utility you actually want from caffeine. So when you're looking for that pick me up, we can get the energy. But if we can avoid caffeine altogether, perhaps we could get rid of all those side effects that a ton of people actually have to battle with every day.
Hmm.
And those side effects I'm talking about are things like, the upset stomach after you have a cup of coffee, or, the sweats you get, or the jitters, or, your heart starts to race. And so we had this idea. We tried to order a bunch of nootropic ingredients off Amazon and concoct them ourselves on our kitchen counter, quickly realizing we're actually not scientists ourselves, nor an ingredientologist, if I pronounce that word correctly too. And that led us down a rabbit hole where we thought, let's identify the smartest, brightest, most competent person in the ingredient space and see if they were willing to partner up with with us on this project. That's when we came across Shawn Wells. He'd been touted by many amongst the ingredient, nutrition, biohacking world as the number one person in formulation and ingredients. And we said to him, look, we have this idea to create an energy drink without caffeine. Everyone needs energy, everyone's consuming caffeine, but there are clear signals that suggest that, if we can provide an alternative to something that to many is harmful,
Hmm.
people will take this up overnight. Um, and it so happened that Shawn had been working for several years prior to us approaching him on actually kind of looking into the caffeine molecule and at all its properties, identifying that one of its core properties actually gives you all the energy and the focus you're looking for without
Wow.
many of these side effects. And then built a whole team around him to identify how to create that on its own.
Hmm.
And that was where we began the journey of Update some
Right.
3 years ago today.
Wow. So Shawn, just tell me a little bit then about number one. Like, obviously there's a huge caffeine addiction. I was telling Daniel, I came to the States like 25 years ago from Ireland. A bit of a tea drinking culture we used to be back then. But when I first came to America, I was kind of shocked how coffee and caffeine was so ingrained in everybody's lives, and how there was this caffeine addiction that I'd never seen before.
100%. We have data that shows that 90% of the planet is consuming some form of caffeine or another, whether it's just naturally through certain herbs, beverages, tea, coffee, energy drinks, all the things that we do. 90% of the planet is consuming caffeine on a daily basis. If I were to tell you that 90% of the planet does anything on a daily basis, it might blow your mind,
Yep.
including eat, go to the bathroom, shower, right? So 90% of us consuming caffeine is a mind-blowing statistic. And yet 90% of us also that consume caffeine want to consume less. So clearly it's a problem when about 81% of the population is saying, I don't like what I'm doing. It's like the devil that you have to live with, right?
Hmm.
Because it's addictive, where we need it. And look, caffeine at the end of the day, I don't know if you've read the book Caffeine by Michael Pollan, but it's an amazing book. And he talks about how it was so critical to the Industrial Revolution. It was critical to third shift being built out, to all of these things that we've come to know in our capitalistic driven society, a
Hmm.
productivity driven society. It's very different from Europe in the 1800s when they were drinking during the day, and you know things were radically different.
Hmm.
Things were closed down at 6 p.m. And now we live in a very different society, and I would argue that caffeine had been critical to all of that. And with the CYP1A2 gene, when we look at that, about 60% of the population is a slow metabolizer of caffeine.
Mm.
And so what that means is we all don't experience caffeine similarly.
Right.
We think it's the same thing. It's kind of like if I eat a banana, you eat a banana, we're like, hey, we're both eating bananas. I know how a banana tastes. I
Hmm.
think that's how you're tasting it. Caffeine is a whole different thing, to where a fast metabolizer has a 1.5 hour half life, meaning like half of it's gone in 1.5 hours from your blood plasma. And then slow metabolizers, it can be 10.5 hours for the half-life, meaning
Hmm.
you will need 3 days to eliminate that caffeine. So this is why some of us are battling the brain fog, the anxiety, the irritability, the sleep
Hmm.
disruption, all these side effects that we're having. And when we actually look at studies now, because studies for years on caffeine have given equivocal or kind of confusing results, where some of the participants got pretty good results in terms of athletic or cognitive
Hmm.
performance, and then some didn't. And now we know why. And we actually see, when we look at this gene and divide out the participants accordingly, we see that certain participants are getting gains in performance, but the other ones are actually getting
Hmm.
declination or
Right.
lower performance. Not only not improvements, but negative
Mhm.
effects from having the caffeine. So this is where this is really exciting, is
Yeah.
this metabolite of caffeine solves so many of these problems. It gives you all the benefits of caffeine, because all those benefits come from paraxanthine, and nearly all of the side effects come from caffeine itself. So the longer you're sitting in this kind of slow drip to paraxanthine, the more toxic side effects you're having.
Wow. And then it's so from that perspective, the way different people metabolize caffeine, often people are, as you said earlier, Daniel, consuming more and more and more because obviously, if I'm metabolizing it really slowly, I'm not getting the impact I was looking for when I first consumed it. So I'm probably going to consume more and more and more to try and compensate. Is that right?
I would actually flip that around.
Yeah.
And so, if you're a slow metabolizer, that means you're consuming caffeine. Well, let's take a step back. Everyone consumes caffeine because we want energy or to be focused. If you consume caffeine and you're a fast metabolizer, it pretty much runs straight through your system. You hear all those people who say, "Oh, I can have an espresso before bed and pass out." Those are people who are fast metabolizers. That's kind of like you, John, where you mentioned you drank monsters every day.
Mhm.
And then you have people who are slow metabolizers. Shawn actually is one of them. And those are people who will drink a cup of coffee. They actually get, I would use the term overstimulated.
Right.
So they're looking for that like in the zone energy and focus, but rather what they're getting is this irritability, this anxiousness, this real like body stimulation, which typically is followed by a crash.
Yeah.
And that's because the caffeine and the different metabolites are taking a while to actually go through your system.
Mhm.
And just to kind of take that further for the listeners, we've been talking about paraxanthine and caffeine, just so they understand. And for you, you have caffeine kind of like as this umbrella
Yep.
molecule. And when you metabolize it, whether you're drinking a coffee, a tea, consuming an energy drink, it's going to break down in your liver into three components. Paraxanthine is the primary component, the one that we're saying is responsible for all the benefits, and then it also breaks down into theobromine and theophylline, two other metabolites, which together with the caffeine molecule are what's attributed to many of the side effects.
Oh. And so then when you sat down to build your energy drink, right? I mean, and this is kind of when you position and brand and all of that in the marketplace. Bringing to market a an energy drink without caffeine. I mean, that was probably your first challenge, is it, to convince people that you can get not just the same effect, but you can actually get a better effect by using this.
Totally, and I think the first challenge was really in creating this in the first place and seeing if it would work. There are so many functional products out there today, right? You just have to walk down the
Mm,
aisles at any supermarket and you see functional waters, functional energy, functional this, that, CBD adaptogens.
mhm.
But how many of them, when you actually drink it, do you turn around and say, huh, I actually feel something?
Right.
And typically you don't. And that's typically because our genetics are all different. However, the one kind of channel that tends to see the most results consistently are caffeinated beverages, because caffeine, as we know, is a central nervous system stimulant and it works. And so the key for us was like, how can we actually make sure when someone reaches for an update and drinks it, they turn around and realize it worked? And that's where Shawn and his magic came into
Mhm.
play. And Shawn, well, you can tell them about the challenges we had in formulating this product.
Yeah, for sure. It was a beast. So Daniel wanted to do this is the list, like something in the little can, like a Red Bull sized can, right? Instead
Mhm.
of like the monster sized can. So a lot less fluid volume. He wanted to do natural, non-caloric sweeteners, which, this is
Yep.
tough. Like, so you're avoiding sugar
Mhm.
and you're avoiding things like sucralose, also known as Splenda or Ace
Mhm.
K, or some of these other artificial sweeteners that are easy
Right.
to sweeten with.
Mhm.
So we're dealing with like stevia and monk fruit.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the highest level of paraxanthine that we allow in one serving. And so it was like this super tall list of like the most difficult things, and he wanted it to be flavored water, kind of like the hint type thing. And so this was a very, very tall task,
Mhm.
the most difficult task of my career, and I've flavored over 300 products.
Wow.
But I love where we came out to. It's really clean tasting, and the deck, meaning the ingredient declaration, that's what we call it in the
Mm.
industry, is super clean as well,
Mhm.
to where you don't have sucralose and Ace K, you don't have sugar in there, you don't have all these things that are present in all these other energy drinks, where it's basically, as Daniel was saying, like sugars, colors, sweeteners, and then of course caffeine, and then what we call a fairy dusting of all these other ingredients that they list, like ginseng and
Mm.
CoQ10 and all these things. They're not in there.
Right.
Trust me. They're in there at like a quarter of a milligram, and it's
Mm.
basically inconsequential. And to me, it should actually be illegal to
Right.
list these things on the label, but not have them in consequential doses, to where like the study dose is. Like for
Gotcha.
CoQ10, it would be 100 or 200 milligrams. For ginseng, it would be 300 milligrams, not a milligram.
Right,
So
right.
this is what's frustrating about the industry right now. And that's the other thing I didn't mention yet. Daniel also wanted not just the paraxanthine max dose, but he wanted a bunch of other nootropic cognitive enhancers at their actual study-based dosing. And almost all those things do not taste great.
Right,
So,
right, right.
uh, anyway, we did it. We
So
did
you
it.
have nootropics in there too, yeah?
100%, and none of this fairy dusting nonsense. They're all at their study back doses. So
Mhm.
There's really not a drink like this on the market
Mhm,
right
mhm.
now.
And just for the uninitiated, either of you, just explain the nootropics because that's been just flung around everywhere now, and I don't honestly believe everybody really understands it.
I can take this. So nootropic just means that it's boosting cognition, like any ingredients, and this can be drug, supplement, herb, anything along those lines. Some of the most famous nootropics are things like Adderall or
Mhm,
Concerta or some of these kind of ADHD drugs. Certainly, modafinil, which is also known as Provigil, or the other isomer, which is New Vigil. These are very popular nootropics. Of course, there was the movie Limitless that kind of
mhm.
really brought this to the popular zeitgeist, right? But then along the herb lines, there's things like or supplement lines. There's things like alpha GPC or CDP choline, methylcobalamin, which is the active form of B12,
Mm.
5-HTP, theanine. You know, there's a bunch of these ingredients that we've been exploring for their ability to enhance cognition. And not all of them are going to be central nervous system stimulants. They're going to be sometimes they're things that actually kind of put you more in what's known as the alpha brainwave state to where you're in a flow state. There's a degree of
Mm.
stimulation, which is the sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight, or freeze, right? Like we do need like a little bit of that hustle, a little bit of that stimulation, a little bit of like go get it. But then we also, when we're in our best state, we're also in that flow state. It's partially relaxed too.
Mm.
And this is where you get your best level of focus. Like, so that's where like things like theanine and 5-HTP come in to kind of even this whole thing out to where you kind of get this yin and yang effect of flow state. And that's that alpha brainwave state where you don't feel just jittery and overstimulated like you often
Right.
feel with caffeine or these, you know, energy drinks like Bang or whatever. So this is where update really sets itself apart, is that you're in that flow state to where you can be very productive and feel good about what you're doing.
Right, right. So Daniel, when you released this and brought it to market, um, with maybe the first groups that you interacted with, what was their kind of feedback? I mean, how did especially the people who are maybe addicted to energy drinks or addicted to caffeine or love their stims, how did they react?
Sure, great question. So I think to Sean's point earlier, we have a ton of data that suggests that almost everyone we speak to who's consuming caffeine also wants to cut down on their caffeine consumption.
Hmm.
So to a lot of people, this was like music to their ears. And to take that a step further, we spoke about how people metabolize caffeine
Yep.
before, and there's a ton of people within the population that metabolize it really slowly. And for these people, a lot of them try to avoid caffeine, especially in excess. Most people will compromise with a coffee in the morning, but then you have lunch and you come to the afternoon, and what do? You need an energy pick me up, and you don't really have an alternative. And what we've found is people who are looking for that kind of pick me up in the afternoon have really started to replace it with update. And so sure, it's been a challenge to say to people like, "Hey, we have an energy drink without caffeine," and then the immediate response is, "Huh?" Because you associate caffeine all the time with energy. But our
Mhm.
answer is really quite beautiful. It's just try it and give them a
Right,
can, and let us know what you think. And we constantly get people who will come back and say, "Oh wow, this is really a different type of energy that they've experienced." And particularly for those people who metabolize caffeine slowly and who have to put up with all these side effects, for them it's
right.
really the first time they can get what they were looking for, but experience it in the way that a fast metabolizer would, without having to compromise and suffer those consequences.
Mhm. And just about and just let me ask you about this for younger people, because one of the issues, obviously, with energy drinks that we've had over the last while is being consumed by younger and younger and younger people, and I even know that from my son when he was growing up, from the skateboarding crowd and all of that. They were, yeah, I remember them at camp, like getting people to buy Red Bulls for them, older kids, and then they'd all drink them and all go crazy. Um, But how does your drink in terms of younger people? Is this a much safer alternative?
Yeah. So look, the way that we market the product is obviously to adults only.
Sure.
We don't recommend children to drink the product. But Sean can jump into this further. But paraxanthine is actually 10 times less toxic than caffeine.
Hmm.
And so not only do you as a consumer immediately identify that when you drink a can of Update, feel great, and realize you're not jittery and you don't crash, um, but also in the sense of how much of paraxanthine one can consume, um, it's far safer, and therefore you can consume 300 milligrams of paraxanthine, which is what we have in Update.
Right.
Um, Whereas if you were to consume 300 milligrams of caffeine, say in a Monster or a Bang, at least if it was me, I'd be like running off the walls and then I'd crash.
Hmm.
Yeah, for me, it would be even worse. Like, I would not sleep that night for sure. Like, even if I had it at, 8 AM, 10 AM, I would not be sleeping. I would be irritable and anxious all day. I'd be, tapping my foot. I would have headaches. I would be confused and have brain fog. Like, it would be horrible. I can't even imagine having 300
Hmm.
milligrams. So, but I do the Update every single day at that level. And it's just
Hmm.
night and day difference. And what Daniel's saying, I tell this to everyone. Sometimes I go through the science that I was giving you before, and I sometimes see them kind of glazing over, and I'm like, you know what? Just try it. And
Right.
everyone that tries it, one, loves it, and then two, when they go back to caffeine, they talk about what a dirty experience it is, because that's the antithesis of what we're talking about. We're talking about how clean paraxanthine
Mm.
is, but it's really noteworthy when you go back and you
Right.
realize, like, "Oh my god, I feel terrible."
And yeah, so you've had people who have tried it and then gone back to their regular stuff and they have these experiences?
Yeah, definitely. And also, a lot of people have actually reached out and said drinking paraxanthine and Update vis-a-vis, it's allowed them to actually, cut down the amount of coffee they're consuming. So
Mhm.
take me as an example, whilst I am sensitive to caffeine, I like the taste. And so, like everyone, I'm willing to put up, and I want the energy, right? So, like most people, I'm
Right.
willing to put up with some of the side effects and disrupted sleep, etc. And I would have, 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day, not atypical for other people. I now have one. It's just in the
Right.
morning, and then I have an Update, hours thereafter, and that's it. Sustains me through the day.
Fantastic. Well, listen, gentlemen, this has been fantastic. I'm so excited. Whoops.
Oh,
There you go. There's a studio set just falling down, but never mind. Um, so before we go, obviously, just give people a little bit of more insight into where this is available and where it's likely to be available.
yeah, sure. So you can find our product in store. We currently sell the product in New York, as well as in LA. We're going to be launching very shortly into Erewhon and Mother's Market, for example. And then you can also
Mhm.
head online, whether it's to our website, drinkupdate.com, or on Amazon, you can find us too.
Fantastic. Well, listen, for all you caffeine addicts out there and energy drinkers, here we have zero crash, zero jitters with zero caffeine, but still all of the energy and focus. It's quite fantastic what you both have done, and I look forward to hearing back not just from me, but from my audience as well, of people as they test this out. Because, like I said, I think this is I think this is going to be revolutionary, like you say, because it's such a big market, but it's a dissatisfying one, I guess. I guess you drink these energy drinks, you drink them for a purpose, yeah, but you're not you don't feel that fantastic about it either, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can attest to it. You mentioned you drink them every day.
A lot, yeah, for many years. All right. Well, listen. Thanks again for joining us today. Thank you for watching and listening. And like I said, go check out Update and please come back to me and give me your experiences, and I'll pass it on to the folks, or you can pass it on yourself, because all of their
We would
contact
love that.
information will be below this video. So thanks, Sean. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, John.
And
Thanks,
I will
John.
see you all again soon. Thank you.